Thursday night live stream. Let's see if people will join. I've got my fan over here because my apartment doesn't have what do you call it, air conditioning. So I hope the fan noise isn't too crazy. Let's see if some people will join me for the live. Usually TikTok needs a day or so. No, sorry, a few minutes to send people my way. Then we can talk about all sorts of things. So let's talk about what's happening in the United Kingdom. What is really going on? The thing I found most strange about this crackdown on white working class freedom of speech is actually the lack of international condemnation. When something like this would happen in Russia or in Iran, we in the West would always tell them, oh, those bad, evil people, look what they do to their population. Look how they beat down their public. Look at how they censor everybody. And all of a sudden, when it happens to us, strangely, countries like Iran or Turkey or Russia, they don't say a word about what's going on in our part of the world. That got me thinking really cynically about this. What if the crackdown on free speech in the UK, first of all, was planned? So it's not like they started protesting, the protester and the riots, and then the government starts to respond like they're a bunch of Stasi motherfuckers. No. The government was waiting for protests to happen so they could then insert their government-funded Secret Service rebel rousers to stir things up and basically blame the people for it. So the government was looking for an excuse to start rounding up all the people they don't like. But secondly, they do this, they start rounding up the white working classes in the UK because probably it's part of a deal. Now, politics does business too, but they don't do it for money. In politics, in international politics, you do business for influence. So imagine it this way. Say the West wants to achieve something in Pakistan, and they need some voices in Pakistan censored, and they need the help from, say, Pakistan and from the Indian government to do this. Then the Indian or the Pakistani government can say to England, okay, you know what? Let's make a deal. We will work with you on censoring our people in our countries, these voices, but only if you beat down on the white working class and throw them in jail and release all the gang rapey people onto the streets. So I think in politics it's that cynical. Politics, international politics, is the most cynical business in the universe. It's not even about money, it's just about influence. And you can trade influence between states, right? So even now with the so-called war against Russia, you can have this situation where the US needs some kind of economic benefit from Russia, but they need certain influence or they need to censor something in Russia. And even now, despite the sanctions and despite the war, Russia can say, okay, we'll do that, but only if you do this and this for us as a favor. So politics is extremely cynical. All right, I see some people joining the live stream now, so that means I can keep talking. Someone says, it's like in the USA when you have neo-Nazi groups founded and run by the FBI. Exactly. All right. Right, so we're dealing with very cynical situations here in the UK. You have a lot of fake Nazis, fake feds, people dressing up like clowns, marching up and down the street, waving their flags. It's supposed to intimidate people, but of course, they're really doing it for the cameras. It's live theater. The news cameras are there to record it, and it's only through the news broadcast that people at home who barely go outside nowadays because they're too fat and lazy, they get scared for things, they think half their neighbors are Nazis now, or everyone's in the new Fed club or something. And that is how they rule. All modern rule is through the media, through the TV to reach the old people, and through TikTok platforms to reach the younger people. And to some extent, X has become better. Twitter X under Elon Musk has more freedom of speech, though not entirely. There's still strange things you can't say. You're not allowed to dead name people or something. Weird. Let's not even get into the trans stuff. The thing is that I have more freedom of speech on TikTok, on Twitter, and less on TikTok, but I have far greater reach on TikTok and a far smaller reach on Twitter X. So it depends again. Maybe that's also a bit cynical. Yeah, it's about control, right? Bringing in martial law, but not with British soldiers, right? With foreigners, right? I'm from the Netherlands. So the British people are, of course, being severely psychologically intimidated at this point. Everybody's scared to give their opinion. You start thinking about, oh, what did I post like 3 months ago? Am I going to go to jail for this? So you start deleting your old posts, hoping they didn't see them, right? So that must lead to some kind of psychological problem. Depression, thoughts of suicide. People are going to have psychological, mental problems over this when you can no longer speak your mind, and like you have to think twice, think before you post. That is torture. That is torture. One reason why you should favor freedom of speech is when people are able to say what they want to say, they get it off their chest, they go back to being normal. But if you cannot get it off your chest, you have to internalize it. It starts to grow on you. You may be facing mutiny or a rebellion. Something has got to go. Something has got to give. All right. All right. I don't know about sharing posts with me. Somebody wanted to share something with me. Maybe you can post it in my comments or something. Right. Right. They're testing it in the UK, and I was thinking, yeah, they're going to do it to the whole of the EU next. But like I was talking about, what are they trying to win with this? Well, foreign relations, of course. Say they need the Saudi oil on their side to win the war against Russia, but the Saudis say, okay, we'll sell you the oil for a good price, but we want you to censor your working classes. We want you to start rounding up your white people so we can send in more Muslims to your countries or something. It's all extremely cynical. But once you realize this is how it works, foreign politics is extremely cynical, international politics, and rule is done through the media. And those two pillars, you sabotage either one of them, the whole global system starts to wobble and collapse, you know. Yeah, someone asks in Dutch, what can we do as civilians or citizens? Something has to happen. The people need to work together. Yeah, well, that's the point. People need to work together. Let's see, what can we do realistically? It's always very hard to see through these big, complicated problems and then figure out, okay, what can we actually do? What are really our possible actions going forward? And I think, no, just give me a second, you know. The white middle class in Europe and in North America are still financially rich. They have a lot of savings. In fact, the US American citizens have more savings than the banks combined. You think the banks are powerful and rich, but the US middle class actually together has more savings. So of course the banks and everybody is after that money. They want that. They want to basically rip you, right? Rob you and bankrupt you. But there is therefore some potential if you would somehow figure out how to channel these funds, channel the savings toward the right goals. You have a revolution on your hand, or what I would call a reaction. I'm not so much interested in revolutions, which is usually socialist, to bring in socialism, but we have the reaction, the reactionary movement to beat back progress and start over on a new sort of foundation where human needs are met again, rather than only the billionaires' needs. I'm always in favor of strengthening the people, making people healthy again. And in the USA today, half of people are overweight. You know, in Europe it's not so bad yet, but some of it has to do with aging populations, of course. Old people grow fat because they no longer use their bodies for anything. But that's not right. We want to have a Spartan population of warriors, right? We want men in their 40s to be physically strong and fit so that they can fight if they have to, right? We want, especially, have you ever seen mobs of people run away scared from something? They're so slow. Almost the average individual, the average citizen can't run 5 miles. They can't run 2 miles. They're exhausted after half a mile, right? And so you see these competitions, right, where people go for like the 10-mile run. That's the elite. That's the top 2%, 3% of the population. Whereas the bottom 50%, they can't even run half a mile, you know? Right. The thing is, we need new leadership, a new spiritual motivation. If you can't dream up a sort of desirable future that you want to live up to or work toward, then nothing's going to happen, right? And so I can envision, my vision is very extreme. I foresee the death of the big cities. We live in the age of big cities, of megalopolises, mega cities, and like Tokyo, you know, New York, Mexico City, huge, you know. I had a friend from Mexico once who told me when you fly a plane to Mexico, they announce it, we are now entering Mexico City airspace, and then it still takes you 30 minutes to get to the city center. You know, Mexico City is sprawled out and huge, but these cities are unnatural, unhuman. It's where we've put most people today. You know, most people now live in big cities or near one, or they live in the suburbs of these cities, right? And that's, in my view, untenable. It's going to go away someday. In my visions, the skyscrapers of the past become the burial sites of the future, the cemeteries of the future. We bury our dead on the 50th floor, right? But we don't live in cities anymore. So I imagine nomadic people pulling out of the cities, and most of them won't survive, right? But the survivors pull out, and they start living as nomads again, like the old Native Americans used to live, or as the old Germans used to live in their wagons and their horses and their cattle, right? And then you roam free again. You travel around these big cities, and you don't visit. You'll have a new taboo, and the new taboo is don't go to the cities. That's where the dead live. They are the cities of the dead, really, because so many people will die of starvation in the big cities in the end. That, you know, the memory of that, the trauma of that, the cultural trauma will be so great, you will tell your children to tell their children, don't ever go to the cities. The cities are for the dead, only to bury the dead. That's how I imagine it, you know. I imagine this kind of future where big cities are the end. Cities are the end of people. I just don't believe how, you know. Somebody lives in Czechia. You're from Holland? Great, yeah. Right. I think it's urban versus rural, and in Europe also Christianity versus Islam, or basically white people versus brown people. Yeah. Because I think the cities won't survive, and then everybody has to pull out into the countryside and hope that there are friendly farmers who will give them food, you know. Jonathan, support from Sweden. Globalization's over, and what's next is a return to the more regional power spheres. I don't believe at all that China will rule the world or the US will rule the world. The world will collapse. The world of globalism will collapse before we get to that point. All right. Right. So 15-minute cities are like 15-minute prisons. They say it nicely, like, oh no, we just want to put everything you need within 15-minute reach. But then once they've built that, of course, you're not allowed to use a car. You have to use public transportation. You have to use Tesla self-driving taxis. You can't have a bicycle. You have to walk, right? Once they've built them, they can cut you out of transportation. No more vacationing. Okay, I get it. Airplanes have only existed for 100 years. Maybe they will go away again. And so that's what I mean. There's going to be something of a regression where the bottom half of the globe will not have access to modern amenities anymore. And you have to have a point system or something. But like I said, I don't believe that will last. That will collapse. The people will revolt. The have-nots, or the ones who have no access, they will revolt. Even among the white people, right? The lower class white people, they're going to revolt. They're not going to go along with this. The problem with the lower class poor people is they are the service personnel who keep the machinery, who operate the machinery. Without them, the whole thing would grind to a halt. And so you can't punish them too harshly. If you tell the lower classes, you can't have meat, you can't have milk, you can't have holidays in Marbella anymore, or in Spain, you can't travel anymore, you will lock you up in your 50-minute cities. They're going to commit suicide, or they're going to revolt, or there's going to be a mutiny. They're not going to operate the machinery, and that's why, maybe that's why they want to replace them with robots. But I think that too is going to fail due to energy constraints. The robots won't work. There's just not going to be energy in the end, you know. Yeah, there's a strange reasoning about behind banning alcohol. They think drinking some alcohol makes you right-wing. I don't know about that. I don't really believe that research. I don't think alcohol makes you right-wing. Maybe right-wing people drink a little more alcohol, but I don't think it works the other way around. But that's what they believe. This is the reasoning behind it. They don't want you to drink alcohol, and they don't want you to eat meat because it gives you testosterone and muscle. They don't want you to drink milk and eat butter because it makes you manly. They're really trying to weaken you, you know? Where did Europe go wrong? We started, after the industrial age, we started building big cities, but no one had a vision for the future anymore, and it just became an economic game. There's no vision. All we're doing now is working to keep the billionaires rich, and these are very, very old people, right, in their 80s and 90s, these strange, weird people like, is he still alive? Warren Buffett, people like that. He's American, but we're keeping those people rich, and we have no vision for the rest of humanity. We're just slaves running around in circles, trying to keep other people wealthy, you know? They don't want you to smoke either, okay, yeah. No, I don't smoke, but, you know, I do drink wine, and I don't see a problem in it so much. The highest value of man nowadays is money, yeah. It's purely material. Maybe it's a generational Ponzi scheme, yeah, but when they lose, the bottom just starves. When this Ponzi scheme collapses, the bottom just starves out. Thoughts on usury? Yeah, we should abolish it, of course. Right? Like a lot of these problems have their solutions. They were found in the 1930s, right? So we just want to implement a lot of that stuff. Right. But shortening our life is maybe not even the problem, right? To me, what does it matter if I'm going to be 90 or 85 or 80? Those final years don't add anything to the quality of my life. What I want now, I want to have more action, more adventure today, and who cares if I turn out 85 or 90, you know? Maybe old people over 80, maybe they should just live a little and risk death, you know? Instead of just being so careful not to die, you're holding up society. People need your house, man. People need to move into your house. "50 years as a lion rather than 100 years as a sheep." Yeah, maybe that's true, right? Yeah, of course I've read a lot about psychology books. Right? I keep track of the books I read on a platform called Zotero, and I checked lately. I've read about 1,300 books or so. Now that's not even a lot, because I know some guy who read more than 30,000 books. He reviews them for Amazon too. That's really crazy. The thing with reading books, once you get to about 1,000 books, and you've read history, philosophy, right, political works, geopolitics, and so on, pretty broadly, right? Yeah, your mind changes. You start to see the big picture behind and the reasoning behind a lot of things. Yeah, I must have read something by René Guénon. Yeah. No, I don't like people joining the live. You know. I read a lot about C.J. Jung. I'm now reading his massive tome, his seminars on Zarathustra by Nietzsche. It's like 1,600 pages. I'm at page 200 or something now. It is so deep. I think that is probably the most interesting book I've ever read, but it's huge because it was a seminar, so you read it the way he spoke it, And in English, they discuss the book Zarathustra, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Also sprach Zarathustra, by Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher of Germany. And basically, they say things like, you know, the reason Nietzsche went mad is because the spirit of the actual Zarathustra, Zoroaster, the Persian prophet, reappeared in the body of Friedrich Nietzsche. And so the book Thus Spoke Zarathustra is really the prophecy of this ancient spirit. Like C.J. Jung and so these super psychologists, they really believe that there's a spiritual world. You can be a spirit without a body, right? And so they talk about how all of that, how deep it goes. It's just really wonderful, actually. Very interesting stuff. I think C.J. Jung and Nietzsche were magicians, like real magicians who were able to fuse with otherworldly spirits. I've read Robert Cialdini. Yeah, isn't that the book Influence? He also had Persuasion. I also read that one. Yeah. The Wotan spirit is coming back to us, yeah. Because eventually, Odin, Wotan, is actually the god of death. Or was, before the Viking age, he was the god of death. Later he became this king of Valhalla, but before that, Odin was the god of death. And that spirit, by the way, the god of death doesn't mean you want to die. It means you want the god of death to kill your enemies, right? He's the death, he brings death to your enemies. But the god of death, that spirit has to return to us in Europe so that we can face two things. We can face our end, the end of the industrial urban society, but also face our enemies, Islam, right? Islam and maybe what other problems we have. If this spirit would capture us again, I think we can face up to those. We can face our problems head on without fear because we overcome the fear of death, right? I mean, the powerful concept about Odin's armies of the dead is that if you tell your soldiers that they are already dead anyway and there's no way they'll ever have a life anymore, then they can fight fearlessly and they will confront an enemy who will be trembling in fear. The enemy will be terrified of such men. So that's what we need. We need an army of the dead, Odin's army of the dead, to fight Islam and fight globalism and fight all that stuff. Face our end, face the end of industrialism and urbanism and so on, right? All right. The Red Book, yeah, I also read that one. Plato's Republic is also good, yeah. I'll check it out. So, I think alcohol, it matters whether you drink beer or wine, right? Beer is a grain drink, and I think red wine would get you into the spirit because red wine looks like blood, right? So it gets you into other spirits, right? But I think drinking alcohol to get drunk is not the right thing to do every night. I drink maybe one glass of wine every 2 weeks or so, right? And rarely do I get a little bit tipsy. Because I do a lot of physical exercise and I want my muscles to grow a bit, so I don't want to drink too much alcohol to destroy that progress, right? Yeah, I read the Green Book by Gaddafi as well, yeah. I don't know why I was reading so much. This was in my 20s and 30s. I read so much. I had a real desire to be a voracious reader, but I was probably looking for solutions to what's going to happen to us in the future. And I realize now that what is really going to happen in the future is still up for debate. It's what we are going to do. It's not, because you only have two choices. Either your enemy imagines your future for you, or you imagine your future. We're going to imagine our future. We're going to do it for ourselves, right? I don't want to continue on this track where we keep running in circles, feeding the billionaires, right? No, we're going to stand up for ourselves and make this life still worth living. Can you name some titles by René Guénon? Because I can't remember which title I read. Do you think there's a big change in the next 5 to 10 years? Yeah, the next 5 to 10 years, the old billionaire class, like Warren Buffett and so on, they're going to die of old age. Maybe then finally something will change. Maybe finally they will realize that the USA cannot win the war against Russia and China simultaneously if they also have to fight Iran, and that maybe some other configuration becomes possible. The White Russians with the White North Europeans together, for example, Germany and Russia. Who knows? Under a spiritual Christian banner, infused with this Odinist, spirit of death, fearlessness, right? And then we face Islam together, because Russia also has an Islam problem. We could help each other out with that. It doesn't have to be this way. Also, numbers don't matter. It is mostly the technologically advanced societies who will defeat the less technologically advanced societies. The number of people don't really matter in this respect. You need to outclass people in terms of bullets and bombs, right? All right. Let's see, how long have I been talking to you? Oh, just 26 minutes or so. I always try to fill an hour, but sometimes I need to take a little break to figure out what next to talk about, I was watching TikTok, and there are so many people who label themselves autistic or ADHD, people who look on the outside perfectly normal, and I think that they are not what they say they are. People somehow want to have these labels. What for? To feel like you're different or you're special? Or is it just because there is some truth out there that you're not willing to confront? Because to me, an autistic person is someone who's like, like broken, or people who watch the dryer or the washer go round and round and round for all day long. Those used to be autistic people 20 years ago. Nowadays it's, oh, you're a podcaster, you must be an autist. That's not how it works, Yeah, but they're misdiagnosed because they're also self-diagnosed. And also, I think a lot of psychologists are just quacks. People really don't know what they're doing anymore. The bunch of amateurs at every level of society, dribbling fools, All right. Was the French Revolution a net positive or negative? Definitely negative for our civilization, because they introduced first this hard socialism, and then came the dictator Napoleon. Yeah, let's put on my cap instead of playing with it. I don't know why I do that. Sometimes I just play with things in my hands. Oh, you must be an artist. So the French Revolution gave us atheism. It de-spirited, how do you say that? We lost our spiritual connection because of that. It spread all over Europe. The French then went to attack Germany under, you had von Bismarck. Von Bismarck beat back the French, he defeated the French again. Von Bismarck had some interesting ideas. He wanted the Pope to be electable, like a president, instead of appointed by the cardinals. All right. Yeah, the homelessness problem is largely a junkie problem. They're addicts. It's not a housing problem. You should call them junkies instead of homeless people. Do you think that capitalism is the evolution of the fascism? I don't know about that. Capitalism is probably inherently globalistic and universalistic, because you want to sell your iPhone to everybody, not just to white people, right? So capitalism leads to globalism, whereas fascism is a break with capitalism, a break with globalism, I would say, if done right, of course, because real fascism has never been tried before, right? So we have to try it again. Yeah, we should go Bukele on the crime in Europe, man. I don't get it. Why don't we send our bureaucrats to learn from Bukele how to deal with crime and then just do the same thing here? I would do that immediately. If I were the ruler of Europe, I would send a team there to learn everything we need to know and pay him handsomely, and then we crack down on crime in Europe, man. If the solutions exist, we should use them. Yeah, Trump is old now, right? Trump is old news. It's not really inspiring anymore. In the 2016 election, he was like the new third party candidate, really, or like the third option, really. Nowadays, it's just like, we need more immigration because my friend Elon Musk wants to sell more cars, no, man. Right. Somebody wrote "kill all white people" on a church in Norway, right? But I saw something similar also in the UK. This could be again a psyop, a psychological operation by the what do you call it, the secret services of Europe, to try something out again, something weird. I don't really fall into those traps anymore. And when I was younger, I would like believe things very quickly, but nowadays, like no. There's always something behind it. There's always some motive behind it, Trump entered the scene as an outsider, yeah, but he quickly became owned by those. And then some say that was the plan all along, right? There's a theory that Trump deliberately lost the election in 2020 because he didn't want to be the COVID president. Now that COVID's gone, he wants to be the president again, right? All right, why doesn't anybody tell Kamala Harris, you need to drop out because you're retarded? Right. I also said that, yeah, Trump represents the coming of the Caesars. Yeah. That is true, but, we'll see. Maybe his son Barron, he has the looks for a Caesar. All right, so, yeah, we're going to have something like it. In the end, when the economy collapses, it becomes a struggle for power. We will no longer be chasing money, but rather survival. And for that, you need muscle and power. So yeah, it becomes more of a Caesarite dictatorship in the future. But the question is still how powerful. Will they still control Europe? Or will Europe, like the Byzantine Empire, Eastern Roman Empire, break away from the Atlantic NATO clique and join Russia, for example, and will power move? Will the real power then survive in Europe, whereas the USA, like the Western Roman Empire, sinks and collapses onto itself? Yeah, but you have elections. The USA has elections and they matter. You can't just say you're a republic and then what? You still have elections. So. But today the USA doesn't work like a republic. It works like a socialist state, really. But I do favor a republican system. Yeah. Could you have like a sort of confederacy of republics in Europe, so that we can do away with the European Union and effectively make ourselves a Spartan warrior state, like Plato's Republic, and then come up with a new spiritual energy, definitely to beat back Islam. But what else do you want? What I want is, life is so freaking boring. Most of our bureaucrats hold us back, they hold us down, right? And I understand you don't want to squander the wealth you've built up, but then let's use it towards some active goals that are meaningful, that inspire people again. We're really missing this, Yeah, people with an average IQ of 85, you can't just move them to a society like Europe, which was built by people with IQs of 100, and then expect the lower IQ people to maintain this. No. If they would take over by large numbers, you're going to have to rely on AI and robots, because the newcomers are not going to be able to maintain this society. It will collapse, all right? So then you have a minority of intelligent people left to manage the AI and the robots. What if they revolt? What if they strike, all right? What if they turn the robots against their masters? I like to play with these imaginary future scenarios, because Would I run for office? If there's this opportunity to win some power in Europe, I will do it, yeah. But I don't know if I need to do it through the political path. I don't know how to do it yet. Give us some Heidegger red pills, if I can think of some. Yeah, his philosophy is very intricate, yeah. The North African Romans, they simply stayed there, I suppose. They mixed with the locals, got raped. Does Europe need a Second Amendment, like the right to bear arms, right? Yeah, I mentioned what Europe needs is a sort of, we have the military and the police, right? But the police are now a sort of state police everywhere in Europe, in Western Europe, maybe also in the USA. It's a state police force protecting the media and protecting state interests. We need an actual police force who protect the people from the government again. And those used to be called differently. They were called the Shooters Guild or the Rifle Guilds of Europe, which we had in the 18th century, even late 19th century. When you go to the Oktoberfest in Munich, there's one of these big tents. I don't know which one, the Hackertel? No, I don't know which one. One of these tents, they have a section where you can shoot. There's a shooting range that they set up there. And that's part of the historical presence of these rifle guilds and shooter guilds in Northern Europe, basically, where you had these ordinary men, farmers and so on, who had rifles, who were also willing and able to protect the people against the politicians. So they would go after the politicians to save their people, and that's what we need. And that's what we need nowadays, you know. All right. I showed up on your X feed. Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, what about Africa, all right? I haven't done Spaces on X yet, no. Don't know if it's very meaningful. I might try it someday. All right, I'm kind of drying up on words, so maybe I'll. All right, I'm gonna call it quits, call it a night. I'm gonna do this every Thursday in the evening around this time, and so you can go to my website as well, jmk.info. You can subscribe there, or even donate if you want, and you can keep up to date with my latest videos and so on. Right? So I wish you all a pleasant evening. Right? Good luck.